How do you actually implement skill development principles over the course of a year? Most coaches have some sort of plan for training, so why shouldn't the same exist for skill development? Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. In this video, I'm going to discuss some more ideas for implementing skill development ideas over longer periods of time. I was recently asked by a coach for more information about this topic, so that's what I'm going to cover here. As this is a particularly large topic, I'm going to specifically talk about what skills to focus on and how that changes over the course of a season and over the course of a year. I'll provide you with the basic approach that I take, as well as some suggestions for modifying that approach to your specific situation. Let's dive in. A workout is important because they're the building blocks of progress. If workouts aren't designed and executed well, there's not going to be much progress. However, doing the same work over and over and over again isn't going to lead to much progress either. Just like fitness won't be built by repeating the same workouts over and over again, skills need to be challenged in different ways as well. So how skills are approached needs to change over the course of a year in order to allow for continued progress. But at the same time, there needs to be some consistency or change isn't going to happen either. And that's what we have to figure out how to do, how to provide consistency and challenge over time to help swimmers really learn. Whenever I'm struggling with how to conceptualize skill development over time, I always tie it back to training plans. You identify what's important, you work on that, and you slowly increase the challenge over time. When it comes to skill development, we just have to do the same thing. So the first big step, and the one I'm going to focus on today, is identifying what you want to improve. There are a lot of skills, there's a lot of options, and it can feel like you have to address all of them in order to help your swimmers go fast. But as tempting as it can be to work on everything, I really caution you to do so. Instead, think about what skills are important. Then think about what skills are most important. What skills are going to help your swimmers go fast? What skills do they need to improve? This is the most important thing to do. You have to be clear about what you want to accomplish before you go about trying to get it done. Once you're clear on what needs to improve, the rest becomes a whole lot easier. There's only so much time, there's only so much energy, so it's critical to focus on what matters most. You want the biggest change in performance, so you got to focus on the skills that are going to most positively impact performance. I talk a lot about the importance of creating more propulsion, reducing the amount of resistance, and improving timing. So those are 3 areas to focus on, and improving in those areas often leads to faster swimming. If you're not sure where to begin, that's a great starting point. However, you may need to take it a little bit deeper than that. When it comes to alignment, it could be body position, it could be breathing, or it could be eliminating side-to-side motions. When it comes to propulsion, you can focus more on the upper body, you can focus more on the lower body. And when it comes to timing, there's often 2 or 3 key aspects of timing within each of the strokes. You can keep it a little bit broader, or you can really narrow it down to what you really want to improve. Depending on your coaching context, it can often make sense to really focus on 1 to 2 strokes at a time. Sometimes that's because they're senior swimmers and they only really race 1 or 2 strokes, but it can also make sense for a 12-year-old to focus on their breaststroke for 2 or 3 months to really help take it to the next level. If you want anything to change, there has to be a directed focus towards creating that change. So what I try to do is pick 2 to 4 skills that I really think need to be improved, and then really try to focus on those for a set period of time. During that period, most of the time, most of the energy is focused on getting that done. So about how long should you focus on something? In general, 3 months is a pretty good rule of thumb. It's long enough to create a lot of meaningful change, but it's not too long where things get stale or boring. 3 months is also short enough that you can create a lot of different changes within the course of 1 year. If you're coaching year-round, that means you can make major changes in 10 or so critical skills by working on 2 or 3 skills in 3-month blocks. And when you're always addressing skills that really matter, that's going to mean a major change in performance. As with training, when you are focused a little bit more on one type of training, that doesn't mean you're ignoring all the other types of training. And so the same thing applies with skill development. You're focused on 1 or 2 things, but you can still do other work on the other areas that do matter for performance. Again, you're trying to make big changes in 2 or 3 skills, and then you're maintaining the other skills with a lot less work. Now let's talk a little bit more about how this approach might differ in different contexts. With age group swimmers, because there's a little bit more time and a little bit less pressure to perform today, you can take some concentrated 3 or 4 month segments and really get good at a couple things. You can get really good at a stroke, for instance, backstroke. You can choose to get really good at stroke count work. You can choose to get really good at kicking across all strokes. You can choose to get really good at upper body propulsion across all strokes. You can choose to get better at turns. There are multiple different options. You just kind of lock in on 1 or 2 of them and really try to get better over a brief period of time. You can make massive change in 2 or 3 different areas and then switch it up for the next 3 or 4 months. And over the course of a year, you'll be able to touch on everything and make huge improvements in everything as well. It's likely with younger swimmers that they need to improve at pretty much everything. So this can be a great way to tackle all those different skills and actually make progress in all of those different skills over the course of a year. So let's consider high school swimmers next, or anyone that has more or less a 3-month season. In this situation, everything is compressed, there's a lot to do, and not a lot of time to make it happen. It's important to identify the skills that can lead to the most improvement in performance and can be improved in the least amount of time. Skills like body position, underwater, turns can all make a huge difference in speed, and they can be improved relatively quickly. Those are simple examples, and anything goes as long as the improvements come fast and the improvements lead to faster swimming. Rather than having a big long-term plan, it's about making as big as changes possible in the most important areas as possible as fast as possible. More than the other context, it requires a lot of focus. There's a lot you could do, but it's more about doing what's going to lead to the best results in the least amount of time. For senior swimmers, their relative strengths and weaknesses are going to be more obvious by that point. And because they're at higher levels of skill and because they have a big training background, they're going to need more targeted interventions to create change. For example, whereas age group swimmers can improve their underwaters by working on any number of skills, a senior swimmer may need to work on 1 or 2 specific skills within underwater kicking in order to get better at that overall skill. And they're likely only really working on 1 to 2 strokes that they excel in. So for these swimmers, focus becomes really important too. It's about identifying what they really need to improve over the course of the season to go faster and then locking in on that. So the same principles apply as in the other contexts, but the more specific you can be about what they really need to improve, what's holding them back, the better the outcomes are going to be. At this point, the changes become a little bit more individualized so that those swimmers can come closer to achieving their potential. So for better or worse, there are a lot of different options for improving skills. But to actually improve skills, it requires ignoring many of these options and really focusing. One of the biggest mistakes I see, and I can see it because I've made it, is that there is often a lack of focus with skill development. And while that focus can and should change over the course of a year, there needs to be a lot of clarity as to what is actually going to be improved. Then, once you know what you want to improve, you can decide how to go about doing so. So we've talked about how to select skills and how to potentially change that focus over time. In the next video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to select activities once you know what you want to improve. But for now, if you're struggling to improve skills, decide what's important and then commit to staying focused on that for a given period of time. That alone can make a huge difference in actually facilitating performance. Hope that was helpful, and as always, keep it simple.